In this video, I'm going to talk about the mental diet and how keeping a mental diet can aid your manifestation, and specifically the issue of unhealed daydreams, i.e., you get the same kind of negative things that come from a negative state that just keep on coming up. And you can do all kinds of healing, and it feels like certain things never come when you really start to look at the mind. And I think you need to make a concerted effort rather than just, okay, I'm going to do a mental diet and just be positive and everything. I think if you use this in conjunction with a concentration practice in the morning, which I'll also make a video about to improve concentration, and then also set hourly reminders. Say if you've got a watch that can chime every hour, or other ways to remind yourself as often as possible to stop and look at what's going on in your mind. So sometimes you're just thinking, but sometimes I want to talk specifically about daydreams. And I would say that if you try and keep a log of daydreams, now, as you do a concentration practice in the morning, you can get what's called near concentration. And that's from kind of a meditation practice. So when you are learning to meditate, sometimes you sit and you meditate and you just completely get lost in your mind for 10 minutes. And you just think, oh, I'm supposed to be meditating. You have no idea what you were doing for the last 10 minutes. And as you get better and better, you still have lots of breaks in concentration. But at some point, you get to the point what they call near concentration, that you can actually remember everything that went on in your mind since you lost concentration. Yeah, you lost concentration with daydreaming, but you can remember all of it. So as a manifestation practice, at night time, before you go to sleep, you can review your day, what you were doing in your body. But most people then, they can remember they did this and this. You go backwards to when you woke up in the morning, and then you might do, for example, a never Goddard type exercise of revision. You reimagine things that didn't go very well as though they did go well. So you're kind of encoding a positive memory. But I think another way to do that is with daydreams. If you can get near concentration, so when you lay in bed, you're also remembering what was going on in your mind and the daydreams that keep coming up. And you actually need to keep a log of the daydreams, of what they were. So if you write down, what was the daydream, what were you doing? Was there anything that triggered it? Do you sometimes go off on a trigger? Is there the triggers you need to avoid? A very important thing is what feeling is the feeling that you need to keep on creating. It might be a negative feeling that you keep on creating, like anger. And also, where do you feel the sensation in your body? So for a lot of the daydreams, they cause anger. You need to keep on feeling anger for some reason. And where do you feel that anger as a sensation in your body? And then link it to things that are happening to you. Now, I've done this for a long time, so I'll give you an example. Okay. So a lot of the theme of my feelings, the things that I keep on creating, is to do with being a justified victim. I am innocent and somebody's abused me, and I'm being proved innocent. So one thing I sometimes think about, for example, I've written down, it's not the same daydream, but it's the same theme that comes up. So we went on a school trip when I was a young kid to a supermarket. And they show you, oh, this is what it's going to be like if you work here, and this is how you stack the shelves and everything. And afterwards, they sat us down and we had to write a resentment letter. And I feel like an intense amount of resentment about that. A lot of it is like, I was in a school where I was the only Asian in many kind of instances. And I always felt that I was being treated differently. So there's a lot of resentment then about the way I was treated in my youth. Another time, I was in a computer class at school, and we would just sit there in front of blank computers doing nothing while the teacher read the book, because she had no idea how to use computers. And I was really, really angry about it, because we weren't allowed to turn it on. I was the innocent victim there. But the thing is, this is a long time ago. I'm showing my age now, but it wasn't just you could turn on a computer and start using a mouse. This was in the old days, and you had to actually understand code. And I don't think they gave them any training. So, I'm quite an old man now, and I've got daydreams about when I was at school, although my school days were horrific, I've got to say, but it's often linked to being completely innocent and being abused. And sometimes it's kind of, it's not daydreams about school, but there's always this theme. They're just random daydreams made up from something I saw on TV last night, but it's that same theme of being innocent and being abused in some way. So I need to feel that I'm right. I need to feel recognized and justified. Like I might imagine that I'm in a court case and I'm suddenly found innocent. And that's what I needed to feel when I was young. And I was never allowed to feel it. And I keep on creating all sorts of daydreams. Some of it a tiny amount based on my actual school days and stuff. But much of it is just kind of recycled from my current life because I need to feel that state. That's what needs to be healed. Now, another thing that keeps on happening to me now, I keep on being completely innocent. For example, I'm sometimes the victim of racism here as a non-Cambodian person. I don't want to get into that a big deal and make an issue of it because you get that anywhere. But for example, one of the parts of this culture is that certain people don't want to sit next to you. So say I go onto a train and I sit down in my allotted seat. Occasionally somebody will stand up and just refuse to sit with me and ask to be reassigned a seat. If I go to the cinema, same thing. I sit down in my assigned seat. Somebody realizes they need to sit next to a foreigner and they'll complain to management and ask to be reassigned just because I'm not the same race as them. It's not common, but it happens. And of course, how do I feel in the world? I feel innocent and I feel justified, and I can tell somebody, look what's happening to me. And other people will say, some people will say, my God, that's awful. How can people treat you like that? And what's in my mind, the need to feel a certain way, is creating the circumstances around me. So when you keep lots of these daydreams and you look for the common theme, what do I need to keep on feeling? And do I create situations in the world which recreate that feeling? And the answer for me was yes. So what can you do? Because these things are very stubborn. Like I say, I mean, I have things start up in my life which are based on my school days, and I am pretty old now. That is ridiculous. Now, when I first started doing this practice, there was a lot of emotion around them. And since that time, I'm healed. The things are still there, but they don't wind me up. I don't feel the state as much. And I think it's just habit. The mental pictures can come, but with less or with no emotion. So one thing you can do is, it's a bit like SATS revision, if you're into Neville Goddard. So you lay awake at night, before you sleep, you think of all the things that you've done in life, and anything that went wrong, you just reimagine it as though it worked out a different way. So if you got some bad news in a letter, you visualize it as though it was good news. So all your memories before you sleep are good. But if you get to near concentration with the daydreams, you can remember most daydreams. You change them before you go to sleep. So, for example, if I get this supermarket thing where I was being led around this supermarket as a schoolboy and I was hating everything and being left out because I was Asian, I just reimagine that, going to somewhere really nice and the people being friendly to me. Or say in the computer class, so we're just sitting there and we're not allowed to use the computers. And I'm really angry because I do actually know how to use it. Then I just reimagine that I offered to help. He says, oh, thank you. And I end up taking the class. It just, you need to turn those from positive to negative, and then decide, look, each day that I think this and I catch myself, I'm going to just switch out that feeling. So I come to the sensation, look, I'm feeling angry and justified and innocent and a victim in my body, and it's a kind of a sensation around my stomach, and I just let that go, and I revisualize on the fly in the daytime as well as before I fall asleep. And I think also, if this kind of just, it becomes a master daydream replacement. So I always need to feel a victim in this sense. I need to feel innocent. That's what I'm creating. And I just make an affirmation and a master daydream where I think of me now where I don't need to feel that way. And I keep on resetting and eventually the feeling goes. Now, I'll be frank, the pictures don't go, and I'm not sure why, because I think over a lifetime, maybe it comes even from a previous life where things happen or there's an energy that you bring with you or something. But even now, after all this time, these pictures can come because it's the habit, like a river flowing a certain way. And I think that doesn't matter. I remember reading a book by some Western guy who'd become enlightened, fully enlightened, like a Zen master. He'd been in the East and everything. And he talked very frankly about it. And he described his mind as like a fishing reel. Let's say there's a fishing reel and you've got a huge fish and it gets taller and taller and taller, and suddenly it snaps, and the reel just spins and spins and spins, but it's not linked to anything. So in the mind, he explained it as an enlightened mind, that you still get all these things just coming around because that's what they do. That's the course, like a river flowing a certain way because it's always done that. It doesn't matter about the thoughts spinning. It's that they're not actually linked to anything. The sense of self is gone. It's wider. It's about other people, or it's just gone. There is no self. So it spins, but it's not spinning around anybody. So that's one thing. The other thing I'd say is be careful about identity. So, for example, a lot of the stuff that comes up in my life, it's about being the only Asian in a situation, in a white country, and being treated a certain way because of that. And I spent a long time on my identity. Like, I'm half-half, I'm half white. And there was a lot of kind of racism in my family. And I spent 6 years living in India, learning Hindi and trying to get that identity before I realized that what's important to me is not having an identity, although in society they go on and on, you've got to have a healthy ego and a healthy identity. And eventually I realized that identity is the enemy. And I'll talk about that in other videos to come. But that's not what I really need. What I really need is to be free of identity. So when you're building these like replacement daydreams, first of all, what I could do is I could make a big deal. Look, I forgive, the people that did this to me. And I'm proud to belong to a certain culture or to be a certain race. And then I'm weaving a story around my experience. I'm building an identity. And I think identity takes us away from awakening, even though all of society conspires to tell us that it's so important to have an identity in relation to other people. That you need to feel that you're this way from this country, and you're this race, and you're this gender. And it limits you all the things that you're not. It's like when they say, help a certain social group rather than just help everybody. And I always think of, end violence against women, for example. But we could just end violence not just against people. We could end violence, that we're violent towards animals as well. And we're violent towards the environment. Why not just be kind and that's it? And we don't need to actually involve an identity. Because when we do that, the implication is, well, keep being violent to everybody else that doesn't have two X chromosomes and is human. Why? Why would? And of course, then one thought about your identity, that's who you are, rather than just a basic awakening existence. It leads to more thoughts about identity and existence and self and separateness. So I say, be careful doing that when you're forgiving people, you're changing the ongoing daydreams on the fly. Try and do so in a way that doesn't split you away from other people, but that opens you and widens you to existence. So that's my brief comments about the mental diet and repeating daydreams. So let me know what you think. Please subscribe and tell me you subscribed in the comments, and I'll send you good energy if you do that, and it helps the algorithm recognize me a bit. And think for yourself, because I'm not always right, I'm always Jay.